Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel. You're our host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, it's always thrilling for me to do my show, especially with someone from New Jersey. Like to support my fellow New Jersey peeps. And today I have a New Jersey guy with me. Yay! My guest is Daniel Stillman. He refers to himself as a jack of all trades. He's an entrepreneur, certified yoga instructor, positive psychology practitioner, mindset and integrative health coach. Dan's passion for helping everyone live their best lives every day has been the catalyst for creating holistic WellCare advisors. Dan is also author and writer of You're Capable of So Much More. Get Real, Deal, and Heal. I love that. And I want to welcome Dan Stillman to Chatting with Betsy.
Hi, Betsy. How are you? Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, you are welcome, and my pleasure. I always have a Jersey person with me today on my show. So I have to ask you, Dan, I love the title of your book. How did you come up with that title, and what inspired you to write your book? We'll start with your book first.
Well, throughout my, I was born into kind of a tumultuous situation. It was a little bit of dysfunction in growing up. And through those experiences, whenever I faced adversity, I must have probably looked in the mirror like 50 times and said to myself out loud, you're capable of so much more. So that's where the title of the book came from. But Get Real, Deal, and Heal came from when I decided that I wanted to create something that people could use, this online course called Get Real, Deal, and Heal, for people who basically, like myself, who at 22 years of age is when I addressed some of those dysfunctional emotional issues that kind of plagued me throughout my younger years and through my teenage years, and finally came to a head when I was 22. And when I went through therapy for 4 years through Jewish Family Services and was able to heal the trauma, it was like, okay, what's next? Like nothing else was taught to me about growth versus fixed mindset, or how your brain works, or how to become your own cognitive-based therapist, or what are thinking traps, what a habit consists of. So Get Real, Deal, and Heal is a product that I created to help people who learn positive psychology tools and principles and skills that most people never heard of or were never taught, which we probably should have been taught in our late teens, early 20s.
Yes, I agree. This is really, I don't believe a coincidence. I think it was meant to happen. Lately, I've had a few guests, and it's been, to heal from the trauma. We have to face our trauma to heal from it. And we do things to numb it, the pain, instead of facing it, because it's not easy to face the trauma, is it, Dan?
No, it's very difficult. I mean, I used marijuana and, drinking alcohol when going through my teenage years. And then at 22, I was using alcohol to deal with, some of the pain. But eventually it just came to the point where I just kind of got down on my hands and knees and prayed to God and said, please help me, because, I just kind of hit bottom. And it wasn't like I was even drinking every day. It was more of like a weekend binge type of thing where you kind of numb yourself out. And as you know, Betsy, probably talked to other guests, it just doesn't, people use many different things. It's food, it's sex, it's a lot of different things. And unfortunately, we have to come to terms with the fact that we're using these things in order to numb ourselves. And it's hard. It's hard to face the trauma, and, look at all the fear and look at the shame and look at the beliefs that I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? I did something wrong. Why don't people like me? And kind of really address these beliefs and make a decision to kind of flip them on their head. And it takes a lot of introspection and a lot of work. But once you're able to do that, and you come out on the other side, it's like a weight's lifted off your shoulder and you could start to live a flourishing life.
Yes. And I have to tell the audience, folks, it's never too late. I mean, I started dealing with my trauma and turning a new page, flipping my old beliefs at the age of 60. I'm 67. I'm learning more and more about trauma and facing it and healing from it. And I'll tell you, it is a life changer. It really just is. I feel so much better, so much lighter. And you're right, Dan, people do use drugs, sex, gambling, even shopping. I was using shopping after Matt died, after my husband died. And I caught myself. I'm like, what am I doing? And I just felt like cocooning and getting like cozy clothes and just pulling the covers over my head instead of facing what I was facing, which was grieving. And, even 5 years ago, there wasn't much talk about grieving like there is now. And I'm so grateful, Dan, for people like you who have courses, who wrote a book, who are helping people deal with their trauma. And I'm glad that mental health is getting more noticed, more accepted finally in society. It's a shame it took the pandemic, but I'm glad that now it's at the forefront and people are coming forward and saying, you know what, I need support. And that's okay to say that, folks. It's not a sign of weakness at all. It's a sign of strength.
Absolutely. Vulnerability is the key to having a vulnerable life, having a flourishing life, I should say, when you could get to the point where your self-worth, where you love yourself enough, which is really the goal that everybody should be striving for, is learning to love who you are fully. And when you're able to do that, you get to a point where it's like, okay, you don't have that power over you and that worry of you thinking about what other people think of you, because a lot of us walk around and, in fear of what other people think of us. And when you learn to become your true authentic self and able to love yourself fully in a vulnerable space, then I think that's probably the best place you could be in order to handle life's adversities and bounce back from adversity much quicker as life goes on.
Yes. I was worried about what people thought of me right up till, in my 60s, and I still struggle with, am I good enough? Am I good enough to talk to this guest? Am I smart enough? What will people think? And, folks, you know what? I've always been honest with my audience, and, this goes through my mind all the time. And then I finally say, you know what? I got to relax and chill out and just enjoy talking to my guests, and whatever happens, happens. I can only be me, and can only be the best version of me every day, and improve myself every day. But don't wait, folks, until you're in your 60s. Although if you are and you're listening to this, not too late to change. But if you're young, now's the time, because then you'll have the rest of your life that fully enjoy life and not carry this weight around of your trauma, and not having it hold you back in your career and in your life, because I'm sure you have faced this, Dan, or you've counseled people. When we don't deal with our trauma and our background, our past, we tend to attract the same people over and over again. And then we realize, why am I attracting these people, and how come my relationships aren't working?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're definitely going to attract them. You don't even realize it because these are all subconscious beliefs that you're carrying around, and that creates a habit. Most of us are living, 60% of our actions are habits. And a habit is a cue, a routine, and a reward. And the cue is always stays the same. The reward always stays the same. But the routine, if you keep doing the same routine over and over again, you're always going to get what you've always gotten, and you basically really need to understand how your brain works. And that's what I teach in my courses and in my book, is basically how your brain works from a physiology standpoint, and also, how to become your own cognitive-based therapist. A lot of people don't understand that you need to learn to practice the pause and question the thoughts that come into your mind, because we're very good at making assumptions that have no fact-based evidence. And one of the great things about cognitive-based therapy, Bill, it gives you a foundation of like saying, hey, what is the evidence for and what is the evidence against this thought I'm having right now? And you basically learn how to use real-time resilience skills to change the thoughts based on facts. So that way you could kind of ground yourself back into reality, because really the driving force behind all this is self-centered fear. It's either you're afraid you're going to lose what you have, or you're afraid you're not going to get what you want or need. And you could be stuck in both of those polarities. But the antidote to that is really learning to live in the moment with grace and gratitude. But it takes steps to do that, which is really stepping outside yourself, using metacognition, which is that voice inside your head that you're speaking to yourself to say, hey, my thoughts aren't my thoughts. Those are just stored kind of just like a computer, and where these memories are stored and these thoughts are stored. And I have to say, whoa, this just popped up. What does this mean? Is this really reality or is this fiction? And you have to go from there.
Yes, I agree. And thank you for sending me your positive mindset course that's called Get Real, Deal, and Heal. How did you come up with that? Because it is phenomenal, and I highly recommend it for anyone to take, because I know it will be beneficial. Did you have to go to college, take courses for that, or is that something you created yourself, Dan? Well, I know you created it yourself, but I mean, yeah, it's just phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I put a lot of hard work into that. I mean, when I started this back in 2018, I wanted to create a course for men, basically, because I created a brand prior to Holistic WellCare Advisors called Yomenga, which is the word men in between the word yoga, exclusive care for the everyday man. And basically COVID hit, and the brick and mortar that I was going to open up for Yomenga, which included this course, Get Real, Deal, and Heal, was kind of put on the sideline. And then I created Holistic WellCare Advisors and realized that this course could help everyone. But at the time when I was creating the course, I had already like a game plan. Like I already had what I knew the 3 negative behavioral patterns were that most people do subconsciously, and the beliefs behind them, which is self-centered fear, unrealistic expectations, and perfectionism. And I already had the antidotes, which were living in the moment, gratitude, and loving yourself. But I needed more information, and I really believe in divine intervention. And I didn't even know about positive psychology really up until 2018 when I was doing my research, and I found positive psychology just doing some research, and I was like, wow, this is something I think a lot of people should really know about. I don't think too many people know about this. So I enrolled in a 9-month course through a company called the Flourishing Center, which is in New York City. It's a global company that teaches people about positive psychology. And then when I finished that, I enrolled in a 6-month coaching course for positive psychology. So basically it was 15 months of, learning all these different things about all these tools, these skill sets, these concepts that everybody should know about, because when you're a young person, we really don't get the guidance that we need. And it's not our parents' fault. They didn't get the guidance either, and they don't really teach these things in school. So I decided, let me create this course based on, some of the things we talked about earlier. I realized, wow, this could help people who don't have trauma, who are in their late teens, early 20s, learn skill sets and tools, because when you turn 30, that's when you make some very important decisions, like where do I want to live? What career do I want to get into? Do I want to get married? Do I want to have children? These are really important decisions. And in your 20s, you're really trying to figure out who you are. And basically the other was because of people who've gone through therapy. What is the next thing that I need to learn that's going to help sustain me? Because we all have triggers, people, things, people, places, things. You could wake up one day, you're feeling low energy, something could happen, and it could trigger these beliefs that you have, or these neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is what creates these different thinking patterns, and you're still going to have some of these neural pathways from trauma. They never go away, but you have to learn how to deal with these triggers. So these skills, these tools, these things that I teach people really help keep those things at bay. Because, and let's be real, life is easy. I mean, let me back that. Life is hard. And, we could have adversity come up, any time. And when you look at your life as a pizza pie, you could each piece could be one could be business, one could be spirituality, one could be friendships, one could be career. And you want to be maybe at an 8 in each area of your life, but something could happen where in career you could lose your job, so you go from an 8 down to a 3. And we want to be able to get back up to an 8 as quickly as possible. And positive psychology teaches you about how feelings are normal. You really want to, process your feelings, but the key is not to get stuck in the emotion of sadness, anger, depression, because then you're going to spiral down the rabbit hole. And the only way you're going to climb back and bounce back from adversity quickly is to be able to learn these skill sets to get you back from a 3 back up to an 8 as quickly as possible.
Oh, I like that. I have noticed in my own experience, Dan, that when I was feeling sad, I would be oh, no, I don't want to feel sad. And the more I said I don't want to feel sad, the more sad I felt. So I then decided to, embrace the sadness. Why am I sad? And it's okay to, be sad for this particular reason and then go on. I have a habit of, I guess it's called ruminating. Is that how you pronounce it?
Mm-hmm.
Of,
yep.
If someone says something that triggers me, or focusing on the something maybe negative, instead of ruminating on the positive. And I see a psychologist. I'm not afraid to say that or ashamed. And he gave me great advice. So I'll give it to you all for free. And that is, set a timer, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then pack it away. And then don't think about it anymore. And you know what? That has helped me tremendously. Just that little piece of advice.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great piece of advice. There's so many different things that you can do, like either call a friend, you could go do exercise, you could make believe that you're pulling the thought out of your head and putting it on the shelf and say, I'll address it later. You could write it down. There's a lot of different ways that you could handle these situations. And again, the key is to not feel ashamed or feel minimalized or trivialized because you're having these feelings. All these feelings that people have is what makes us human. Again, the issue is if we use substances to cover up the feelings, we don't want to feel the pain, or we're afraid to reach out for help, and and we turn the worry into second degree worry, and like you said, we ruminate or we catastrophize. And, there's scientific evidence to say if we could put things in place to help us deal with the emotions, there is like a biological thing that goes on in our body. It takes 90 seconds for a feeling to really to go through the whole system of our mind and our body, to release these neurotransmitters, these chemicals in our body. And if we have a way of like putting things into perspective and being able to like block that from happening or minimize that, then we won't get caught in the rumination of things happening over and over and over again, because after that 90 seconds is when that rumination starts. And then we spiral down the rabbit hole.
Yes, I have heard that. I'm so glad to be talking to you, Dan, because first of all, I don't get too many male guests, and for a male to come on and say, I had this course, I wrote this book, I went for support. I know that as a baby boomer, like I said, I'm 67, I grew up in a time where you did not talk about your feelings. You weren't allowed to express your feelings. And mental health was not talked about. And if you went for mental health, which I did as a teenager back in 1974, that was unheard of. That was shameful. I was made to feel ashamed. I was gaslighted, called names. And it takes a certain strength to go for support when people are making fun of you. And I think it's even harder for men because of how men are brought up. Suck it up, that's part of being a man, and all this other nonsense, which is old school. And I'm hoping, and I'm trying to do my part on my show, that we change that society changes, especially how we raise boys, to be able to express their feelings in a positive environment, and to say, it's okay to cry. It's okay for a little boy or teenager to cry. I never, ever shamed my son for crying or expressing his emotion. And I just have to say that over and over again, because the words that we say to people are not sometimes helpful, they're hurtful. Like when my husband died, and also Joshua's father, for someone to say to Josh to be strong, or you have to be strong for your mom, that's cruel, folks. Don't say that to people, because they are strong. And to say, be strong, is just not a helpful thing to say. It's actually hurtful. I suggesting, I'm sorry you're hurting. How can I help you? I'm here for you. Whatever, you just want to lean on me, go ahead. What's your feeling on that, Dan?
Oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I think it's very important for people to ask what someone else needs instead of just, saying what you think they need. And that's, me growing up as a child. My dad, moved to Florida. I lived in New Jersey when I was 9. So, my dad really wasn't in my life. I really didn't get the guidance that I would, or mentoring that I felt I needed. And, one of the things that, I didn't share, like growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 4, and I grew up, my reason why my parents got divorced is because my mom came out of the closet. She was gay, and she couldn't live that lie anymore. And basically she, was at a time where the DSM, which is what the, psychological association or use for, diagnosing mental illnesses. Up until that time, in 1973, if you were homosexual, you were considered having a mental illness. And they removed that. My mom was brave enough, being born gay in 1945, to say, I can't live this lie anymore. So I bring this up because I was raised in a lesbian environment, and I still got bit by some of these myths of masculinity, like I shouldn't, like you had mentioned, like I shouldn't cry, I shouldn't express my feelings. And you'd think someone like me, who was raised around women who are more emotionally intelligent and expressive, I would have been able to develop some of those skills. But yet I was around other boys, I was around other men who would tell me, buck it up, don't cry, don't be a wussy, be nice, and just do that. And that was kind of when I mentioned manga, why I was creating something for men, because of my life story, and I realized that men are struggling to be able to become their true authentic selves. And I didn't really like the word toxic masculinity. Each of us has a story. Each of us are trying to do the best that we can. Men, I'm not going to say like some of their behavior is that it should be forgiven or justified. There are some bad people out there, right? But we have to kind of, I think, try to like change the stigma of saying, oh, you're a toxic person, because I wouldn't call a woman toxic, right? I think we need to like change that to uneducated masculinity, uneducated femininity. And that's why, it was one of the catalysts why I created the Get Real Deal and Heal course, to educate people, because there's a lot of concepts and tools that, again, I keep repeating it, we just weren't taught. We never even heard of. And, we have to become educated. If we want to change our lives and live a flourishing life, we have to change. And that's the only way that it's going to happen. So, yes, men need to, and they're going to be left behind if they don't, because things have changed, especially like in heterosexual relationships or any relationship. Women are, Me Too movement kicked off in 2016, and God bless, women are like, doing really well, like in jobs and businesses and even in politics and the government and the way science is today. Women aren't depending upon husbands to be the financial person, the breadwinner. Even women today could freeze their eggs if they want to. They don't need a man to even have a baby. Right. So, and I hear the stories all the time, like in the dating world, like it's 100 times harder for a woman to find a really good man who's, let's not say emotionally intelligent, let's just say to have emotional awareness. It's very difficult. And if men don't change, they're going to be left behind.
Well, I really love that, Dan. That's good, because sometimes men and women are emotionally unavailable because of maybe their environment, how they were brought up. But the suicide rate among men and predominantly, male-dominated professions are up. Servicemen, the military, policemen, firemen, even doctors now. Society has to change. And the old school thinking really needs to go out the door. And, I'm not saying raising boys to be wimps in a way, but to be able to express how they feel without harsh criticism or to be made ashamed. I mean, as a girl growing up in the 60s and 70s, if I cried, my father saw that as weakness. Oh, you're weak. You're too sensitive. I've been told that my whole life. You're too sensitive, Betsy. Well, I am. I'm an empath. That's who I am. I no longer apologize for it. If I get emotional during a show, which I've had several times, because of the topic, so be it. I'm human. And this is the thing I wish people would understand, Dan, is that we are not robots. We're human beings. And if someone dies, we're going to cry. And it's okay. And it's okay to seek support. I'm curious, Dan, from your clients who take your course, what's the percentage of men versus women? Which do you have more of?
More of women.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's harder to get men to do the course. I do have some men who do it, but women seem to be more interested in learning and growing. And it's translated into, I do a presentation, a webinar on the myth of masculinity, and I talk about divorce rates. And one of the statistics that I show is that educated women who have bachelor's degrees initiate divorces 90% of the time, because they feel that they've kind of outgrown their partner. And the men are just stuck in a fixed mindset that this is who I am. And it really it just comes from fear of wanting to change. And you have to want to change, because if you don't want to change, then you're going to keep doing what you've always done. And, what it really boils, both men and women, I really feel like I'm a pretty spiritual person, and I believe that vulnerability is the key to everything. And I believe, for me, looking back at my life, I was afraid to be vulnerable because, again, it went back to what I thought people thought of me if I was my true, authentic self. And I truly believe, regardless if you're a man or a woman, right, we all have to strive. Vulnerability transcends femininity and masculinity. If we could all create a world, regardless if you're a man or a woman, and feel the most important thing, even in relationships, is to feel safe, then I feel like you're going to, reach a point where you're going to be your true authentic self, be vulnerable, and not be scared to express how you truly feel, because nobody's going to judge you because of whatever beliefs you have, because of the things you learned between the ages of 0 and 7, based on attachment theory or communication style, how your parents spoke to you, because that's where we really develop all these beliefs between the ages of 0 and 7. And, that's where these beliefs come from, where I'm not good enough, what's wrong with me, I did something wrong, why don't people like me? And at some point, we have to take responsibilities as adults and decide, do we want to change this behavior, or we're going to continue down the path of, like we had talked about earlier, getting involved in relationships that don't suit us.
Yes, I agree. I think that both men and women, there is nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I need support, I want to change, I want to become a better person. And, change does begin with the person looking at you in the mirror, and that's yourself, because you can't change anyone but yourself. And a lot of people think, I could change this person, or if they love me enough, they'll change. Doesn't work that way, folks. You could just change yourself. I have to ask you, for the time is up, what exactly is your Holistic WellCare Advisors? Is that another part of your business?
Holistic WellCare Advisors is kind of a one-stop shop where, my course is located, where people could, get supplements. They could get comprehensive gut testing. One of the things that, I want to end your show with is, I have 3 programs called Nourish 360, which includes my Get Real Deal and Heal course. And a lot of people, my mission is to try to educate people that the gut, your microbiome, is a second brain. So a lot of people are taking a lot of medications and things for autoimmune things and don't realize that a lot of issues come from leaky gut, SIBO, parasites, a lot of different things that they don't even realize. And they don't understand that, your gut is connected to your brain. It's called the gut-brain axis. And then you have your HPA axis, which is your neurotransmitters, which is connected to your enteric nervous system, which is called your second brain. And the metabolites are produced, these hormones, all these things are produced by your microbiome. And so there is this communication that goes between your gut and brain. So if your brain is off, most likely your gut is off. If your gut is off, your brain is off. So if you don't take care of both, which is your microbiome, which you have more than 50% of these bacteria than actual cells in your body, you're really not going to live a flourishing life. So I want to encourage people to really educate themselves. And if they want more information about, the gut and the brain and these comprehensive stool tests that most people have never heard of, and you're sick of taking medications and sick of like the traditional medicinal system, which we kind of do need, because we do need trauma care, we do need medications, but there are alternatives. And if you don't understand or even educate yourself about this, then, you're kind of missing out on possibly helping yourself, cure and find the root cause of exactly what's going on, both emotionally and physically.
Well, that is very true. There's more and more research and talk about the gut-brain relationship, as I call it. And actually, I interviewed someone who wrote a book about dementia, and a lot of research is coming out about as you said, the gut and the brain and how it affects your aging brain. So there's a lot to be said for that. I really enjoyed talking to you, Dan. How can people get in touch with you, connect with you? Do you do Zoom counseling?
Yeah, most
with your course?
I do virtual.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I do virtual. People could go to holisticwellcareadvisors.com and they'll find the programs there. The Nurse 360 programs and the Mindset Mastery piece, and there's other things there as well, such as I have a full script account where people could purchase supplements. A lot of people purchase supplements online, and they're paying a lot of money when they could actually get it for wholesale, and I provide 20% off for people to get a much cheaper rate. So you want to keep as much money in your pocket as you possibly can, especially these days. And and I really appreciate you being on, having me on your show, and thank you for letting me be able to, educate people and help people, because that's really my passion. I want to leave this earth knowing that, not only like you mentioned about men, like I have a 20-year-old, 21 and 18-year-old boys, I want them to grow up to be vulnerable, loving, caring young men, and be able to change the world. And I want to leave this world knowing that I left a mark and educate as many people as I can to help them learn how to live a flourishing life.
Oh, I love that. It was such a pleasure talking to you, Dan. And how can people buy your book? Where can they purchase your book?
It's on Amazon. There's also other audio.com. It's also an audio book. So any audio book platform, they could purchase it from there, or they could go to Amazon, and it's there as well.
And can people connect with you on the website that you just mentioned, the Holistic Well Care Advisors? Okay.
Yep, there's a contact menu item. They could just do the contact, and I'll definitely, get the message, and then, we could set up a free 15-minute consultation or 30-minute consultation. People say 15 minutes, but I never do 15. I want to, it's usually more like 30 or 45, because it takes more than 15 minutes to, really understand what's going on in someone's life.
Well, that's awesome. Folks, the name of the book is You're Capable of So Much More. Get Real, Deal, and Heal. I love the name of that title. That is awesome. And I have to say, when I met Dan, and thank you for connecting with me, Dan, on LinkedIn, I think it was.
LinkedIn, yep.
I could tell that you're passionate about what you do, and that speaks so much about you, because when people are passionate about what they do, you can feel it. You could hear it in your voice, and when I was talking to you, I was really excited to have you on my show, and I wish you much success. And folks, check out Dan Stillman. His last name is spelled Stillman, and all the information about Daniel Stillman will be in the blog that Jeannie White, who is the station manager, writes, and Jeannie produces the show. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passion World Talk Radio Network, who makes this all possible. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you for listening and subscribing. And if you don't already subscribe, please do so. It's for free. I'm on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple, Amazon Music, to name just a few. And, please share the show to help other people. There's great resources. People are wonderful guests with great resources that want to help you have a better life. And Daniel Stillman is one of those people who is a wonderful resource, and I highly recommend you checking out Daniel Stillman. And, folks, we can only change ourselves. And that's what I started to do. I wish I did it sooner. I wish there was people like Dan talking about this 45 years ago, even more, back in my youth. And I would like to tell you can follow me on Facebook, Betsy E. Wurzel, WRZEL, and I have a support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, if you are a caregiver or know a caregiver. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright, because we need it now more than ever before. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passion World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Chat with you soon. Bye-bye now.